Welcome, people of Middle-earth. Today, we're going to be doing a complete technical breakdown of Gollum's grappling in the Lord of the Rings movies, as well as ranking his various attributes, like guard passing, submissions, and takedowns, among others. Gollum showcases his grappling skills in 4 different scenes in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. His first encounter with Frodo and Sam in the Emyn Muil Mountains, his first encounter with the Ring against his old friend Deagol, his ambush against Frodo and Sam on the steps of Mount Doom, and fourth, his final appearance and fights against Frodo inside Mount Doom. So let's do this thing. For me personally, when I analyze Gollum as an opponent, I'm most worried about his favorite technique, the mounted neck bite, which we're going to be breaking down in great detail. But that being said, after watching film on Gollum, the team and I have noticed some holes in his game that we're going to talk about. The first thing we see about Gollum's game is he is an absolute freak athlete. As he descends the cliff face like a spider, we can assume that to be able to move like that, his pound-for-pound strength is off the charts. His bodily control is insane, and his balance and coordination are both excellent. We see Sam and Frodo get the upper hand on Gollum by pretending to be asleep and then surprising him by pulling him off the rocks. But instead of landing on his back, Gollum shows off his high-level coordination and aerial awareness by landing on his feet and avoiding the takedown. Now we have a fight on our hands. He easily pushes Sam and Frodo to the ground, who are both heavier than him. Now, one thing we notice about Gollum when watching these fight scenes is he is an elite fast-twitch athlete. Once he gets the ring in his sights, watch his broad jump onto Frodo. He's able to traverse this distance, which is about 4 feet, in an instant. And remember, in this scene, we know that Gollum is almost 600 years old. The ring granted him unnatural long life, and it appears that these almost 6 centuries did not take a toll on his body at all. In fact, it appears that this time had the opposite effect on his body. He is extremely nimble, spriteful, and explosive, so we can deduce that his muscles have been refined and strengthened over these almost 600 years, turning him into a literal monster capable of exploding at a moment's notice. Taking all of these factors into consideration, we're giving Gollum an A for athleticism. This transition to the ground leads us into the first hole of Gollum's game, his guard passing. Watch how he makes no attempt to pass Frodo's guard, which I'll point out is a very weak guard to begin with. His legs are close together and not bent like they should be, and Gollum still does not pass. Even after Sam tries to pull him off, Gollum goes straight back into Frodo's guard and doesn't employ any offensive techniques or guard passes like a basic knee cut. This tells us 2 key pieces of information about Gollum's grappling game. Number 1, he is very untrained, or at least very unskilled, at advancing positions and offensive techniques. And number 2, he lets his emotions cloud his judgment in the heat of combat. He wanted to grab the ring so badly that he just lunged for it without even thinking. What he should have done is assess the situation. I see my opponent is lying on his back with no real defensive guard set up. His knees are close together and his guard is closed, which tells me this guy likely has no grappling experience, and I'll be able to pass his guard into side control with a simple passing technique. Our ultimate objective is to get the ring, but that's going to be very difficult if our opponent, in this case Frodo, has his hands free that he can use to either fend us off, clutch the ring, or grab his sword that he can use to attack us. So the most efficient path to victory in this particular situation would be to pass his guard into side control, subdue his arms, and force him to open his hands so we can take the ring before Sam has time to recover and turn this into a 2v1, which we want to avoid at all costs. So here's what it would have looked like. Basic crush style pass right into side control. Now we need to subdue his arms. To do this, we're going to first enter the crucifix position by putting his arm closest to us in between our legs. Now he only has one hand to defend. Next, we're going to establish an Americana on his arm furthest from us that is holding the ring. Boom. Then we're going to free up one of our hands by locking down this Americana with our left hand. Boom. And from here, we have total control and can take the ring. We can employ some elbows, break his arm with the Americana, and completely have our way with him. So here's what it would look like at full speed. Gollum obviously has no knowledge of how to pass guard, and he leaves his arms extended on his opponent's chest, making him susceptible for arm bars or other offensive attacks that people can use from bottom. So for guard passing, Gollum gets a big fat F. We see that Sam pulls Gollum off Frodo. Gollum yeets Frodo off to the side with one hand. "Get off me, you filthy hobbit." We see Sam attempting some type of Russian 2-on-1 arm control here, but he only manages to get one of his hands on Gollum's left arm. Gollum then proceeds to step on top of Sam's back, which gives us our first glimpse into his back-taking skills, which we'll talk about later. He jumps off Sam's back onto the cliff face and scurries up about 2 feet like it's nothing. This was a great scramble by Gollum. He escaped a 2v1 pretty effortlessly and quickly got into a position on the battlefield where he had the high ground.
I have the high ground!
Next, he about faces and jumps onto Frodo, but again, failing to pass his guard, establish mount, or use any offensive techniques. This is when you realize Gollum is like one of those kids in middle school PE class that has absolutely no skill whatsoever when it comes to sports, but they were a defensive nightmare for the other team because they would also spaz out on defense and it would actually work. Gollum is that spazzy kid. His defense is excellent, but he has no technical offense. Here, Sam secures a body lock on Gollum and summons the power of the Shire to lift him up off of Frodo and into the air. Then Gollum starts going full spaz mode that leads to another impressive scramble where he turns around inside of Sam's body lock, takes control of the exchange, and goes for his infamous neck bite, which causes Sam to give up the body lock and fall to the ground. Gollum's ability to freak out and explode out of disadvantageous positions with relative ease earns him another A for scrambling. Okay, I want you guys to pay close attention to the next clip because it is perhaps the most surprising and technically sound display of grappling from Gollum in the entire Lord of the Rings franchise. Gollum and Sam fall to the ground with Gollum landing in the full mount position. But remember, we've already established that Gollum does not have a strong top game. He does, however, have a great back control and a lethal neck bite, which is his submission of choice. So instead of landing in mount, Gollum takes Sam's back by rolling off to the side with Sam in his guard. He turns Sam 360 degrees, controls the neck, and puts his hooks in. And then once he has control, he goes in for the neck bite. Textbook execution. Sam would have been in a lot of trouble if Frodo hadn't stepped in and saved the day. We'll revisit and grade Gollum's back control skills later in the video, but first, let's travel back 600 years to the next fight scene against Gollum and Deagol. As this scene begins, we again see Gollum, or Smeagol as he was known during this time before he was corrupted by the ring, with no technical offense. He just reaches out for the ring. We do, however, see an early variation of his best submission, the neck bite, which is interesting. We see Smeagol tackle Deagol from behind as Deagol attempts to run away. Although Smeagol ultimately got the takedown, it wasn't a very effective or efficient takedown. He didn't cause much damage to his opponent, and he didn't land in a very dominant position. So here's what he could have done instead. We're in close right here. Boom. Ogoshi. You can see I landed in a dominant position where I could employ the armbar to pry the ring out of his hand. Ideally, the impact causes Deagol to drop the ring, but even if he holds on, that's fine. From this position, we have options, and we can take our time because it's a 1v1, unlike the previous fight where Gollum was forced to rush the submission to avoid a 2v1 against Sam and Frodo. The most direct approach to maintain control and obtain the ring would be to apply the straight armbar, where he'll be forced to open his hand or else will force it open by breaking his arm. The two stand up here and Deagol goes for an interesting attack. He attempts a standing one-arm throat squeeze on Smeagol. Smeagol eventually pushes off the choke and counters with a two-handed choke of his own that forces Deagol to the ground. This worked out and it was ultimately the technique that secured the victory for Smeagol, but it was not technically sound, required a lot of effort, and it probably wouldn't have worked on a more proficient, competent foe like Aragorn or Legolas. Here's what he could have done instead. For Deagol to keep this choke on, he needs to be putting forward pressure on Smeagol's neck, which means that his body weight will be leaning forwards. So what Smeagol could have done to take advantage of that fact is use what we call in Judo a backwards throw, a throw that sends our opponent backwards as we're facing them. One great option for this situation would be Ippon Seoinage, which translates to one arm over the back throw. So as I feel Deagol's pressure coming forward and his grip tightening around my throat, I grab his arm with one hand, turn my back to him, and enter for Ippon Seoinage as I let Deagol's forward momentum continue forward, which causes him to fall over my hip and onto the ground. This throw would have been great for Smeagol here because it allows you to remain standing and keep two hands on his arm. Now we can utilize a variety of submissions. One effective option, because we kept control over his straight arm closest to us, is an arm triangle. We keep this on until Deagol loses consciousness, and then we take the ring. This scene starts out with Gollum jumping on Sam's and Frodo's backs, where he looks very comfortable. We see him put in his hooks and then take them out to adjust his body position for the takedown. In all my years of grappling, I don't think I've ever seen a two-person double back take. And you know what? The team and I have been discussing it for a while. We've put a lot of thought into it, and we've decided to give our first perfect score to Gollum an A+ for back control. He is a certified backpack. This is the third takedown we've seen from him, which is a good time to discuss his takedown skills as a whole. If we look at all of his takedowns, we don't see a lot of good technique. The first takedown against Sam wasn't intentional. It was a neck bite submission attempt that caused Sam just to fall over. The second takedown was on his homie Deagol, rest in peace, and it was also lacking technique. He just tackled him from behind, and even his tackle was poor technically. Finally, this takedown was not impressive either because Sam was carrying Frodo, so he was an easy target. All Gollum really had to do was lean backwards, which caused them all to fall over. For these reasons, Gollum gets a D+ for takedowns. Gollum needs to stay in his lane and stick to what works best for him, which is taking the back and biting the neck, the back and bite style. Gollum then goes for his second best submission on Frodo, the double hand throat squeeze. We've seen Gollum use this technique before on Deagol, and he's quite good at finishing it once he gets to the position, likely because of his crazy pound-for-pound strength and muscular endurance. This time, however, Gollum does not get the sub thanks to Sam. Sam yeets a rock at Gollum, and then as Gollum recovers and goes after Frodo again, Sam has a flashback to his college days playing defensive line for Notre Dame and tackles Gollum down the mountain like he's sacking the quarterback. Here's what Gollum could have done to keep the choke on Frodo while at the same time defending himself from Sam's attack. Gollum is in mount with the two-handed choke. Now this would be a good position for him if it was just a 1v1, but it's not. This is a 2v1. So this is not a good position because right now we are blind to what's behind us and we're exposed for an attack. We need to reposition. Frodo is weak at this point because of the insane burden of carrying the ring and because the choke has been on for about 25 seconds. So Frodo's ability to defend the submission is extremely low. So here's what we'll do. From mount, we transition to a back take, which will be relatively easy because Frodo is so weak. Now we are using Frodo as a meat shield, so Sam cannot throw rocks at us without risking hitting Frodo, which I doubt he's willing to do. From back control, we can sink in the rear naked choke, which will put out Frodo within a few seconds, and we'll be able to take the ring and piece out of this joint. Inside Mount Doom, at the climax of the trilogy, we witnessed the final battle between Gollum and Frodo. In this fight, Gollum really popped off. The pressure was on and he came up big when it mattered. This scene right here is why Gollum has an A+ in back control. He frickin' takes Frodo's back while he's invisible. Even if you can't see him, he's still taking your back. Certified backpack. Now, we know what Gollum usually goes for here, the neck bite. But we can see him looking for Frodo's finger with the ring instead. Once he gets the finger, he uses a variation of his favorite submission to bite Frodo's finger off and finally steal the ring for himself. The final skill of Gollum's grappling that we are ranking is his submission game. We know that Gollum doesn't have a deep submission arsenal. We've only seen him use the double-handed throat squeeze and the bite. So that's going to bring his grade down because he doesn't have a lot of versatility and diversity when it comes to submissions, but he is able to use his bite submission in a variety of different ways and from pretty much any position. There are many grapplers I can think of that completely dominate at the highest level that are very similar to Gollum in this regard, in that they have their favorite submission that they can pull off from any position. The Rotolo brothers come to mind, for example, with their infamous Darce choke. Those brothers can get the Darce from guard, from standing, from top position, and even with someone on their freaking back. So even though Gollum has a very shallow submission arsenal, the versatility of his bite, as well as the incorporation of his best attributes like his athleticism and back control, allow him to still be able to get the sub. With all these reasons in mind, we've decided to award Gollum with a B+ for submissions. Now, if we take all of Gollum's individual skills into consideration, black belt level athleticism and back control, brown belt level scrambling, blue belt level submissions, and white belt level takedowns and guard passing, Gollum ends up as being the equivalent of an instinctive spazzy jiu-jitsu blue belt with very high potential. The kind of guy who doesn't know any names of techniques but still taps higher belts sometimes because he's unpredictable, wiry, and feral. His lack of fundamental knowledge of guard passing, technical submissions, and takedowns limit him from being promoted to a purple belt. So there you have it, folks, a complete technical analysis and breakdown of Gollum's grappling in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe to your boy for more grappling breakdowns, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.